hopefully you're ready here. We're going to move to the cone. All right, our cone. Our cone can be done in two different ways. I teach people two different ways to make the cone. You can start out by making an upside down V or the beginnings of a triangle. So something like so. But then we've got to fit an ellipse into here. Let's size up an ellipse that touches both bottoms of this V. And then you erase out the inner part, and then you can go in and strengthen your lines if you need to. And you have something that looks like that. So that's way number one. You started with the V, and you went in with an ellipse, and then you remove the inner part of the ellipse. You can also then start for number two way, you can just start with an ellipse. Okay. So I got my ellipse. I know where both my ends are of it. I just kind of divide it in half lightly with a light line, and then I connect my lines. And I get something like so. But then I got a little more to erase out. I got to take that out. And then I got to come in back in and solidify my lines. But either way, these two methods help out if you're new to drawing a cone. Now, I've been doing it long enough where I just kind of come in here, I draw my two lines here, and then I just start from here and just put a curve depending on how curved I want my cone. Either of these three ways, you decide what you like best. All right. Again, if you're new to it, 1 and 2 work good for helping you build. If you're a pro, you've been doing cones your whole life, you can do it the way I just showed you there. Again, the cone is a curved form, right? The only difference with the cone versus the cylinder is it gets narrow and comes to a point at the top. But it's still a curved surface, something like so. And you want to be aware of its curvature because it's going to affect of how we shade it. We also, if we're looking at how things are shaded, if we have our light here, our shading is narrow at the top and it gets wider at the bottom, and it's layered kind of something like this. And what am I doing here? This is like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 value as it spins around. So these are kind of like the makeup, the characteristics. It's curved, and it gets narrow at the top when you're shading, and it gets wider, the value or the shading, as you get towards the bottom. Something that some people kind of forget about or don't recall. There's also one quick look or view of the cylinder that I probably should show you real quick. If I were to do an ellipse, all right, and I did something like this, you can get a cone that is fallen over, and you would have a bottom plane that you would see, maybe something like this, and it's rounded, right, as it goes by. So this is like a cone on its side. You might want to make a little note of that, so the cone could be in a different, way. It also can be hollow, right? It can, if I were to shade it in here, it could be like a hollow, like an ice cream cone, because it can be solid or hollow. You can see into it like that. There's also another unique feature that's on the cylinder and the cone that sometimes we get confused about when we're shading. Not all the time, but if a light source was hitting it straight down the middle, we would have to think of it somewhat like this. if we were doing banding. So here is 1, and then we have 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, and if you had another piece there, 4. So the light is going to go away from it around the back side, so it would come around like this if light was hitting it head on. So there's a couple different tricks that happen when you're looking at a cone, just to be aware of. You can have the light, like we said, on the side here, where it's veering off and it goes from light to dark like this, or it can be coming straight on and you get the value going away or receding away from it. For our purposes, we're just going to work with our light at our upper right corner. And we're going to draw our arrows to indicate where our light is hitting, and we're going to begin shading at our back side. So draw your cone, get your light source out there, put your light rays there, and then you're going to start with your 2-3 pressure, working opposite of light. And remember, it's narrow at the top, and your value gets wider towards the bottom, because the form goes from narrow to wide, or thin to thick. And if I'm getting it in a good spot for my hand, I want to do this, turn it around, and then again I want to be sure that as I'm coming towards my light, I'm picking up my pressure, lightening it up. I don't want to push too hard. And if I'm going to use my pinky finger, I want to be sure that I use the back side of it. I want to wipe it off first, just to be sure that I don't have, or I limit the amount of oils that are on my finger as I try to do shading. And again, I'm going to take my finger, I'm going to work a little bit around my edges. And again, you don't have to use your finger. I'm doing it a little bit for speed purposes here. I would prefer that you master your pencils. I feel like if you can get that real light value with the pencil, it's going to be in your benefit going forward. And as we said, that if you have your base 2, 3, 3, 4 pressure on here, then you can go back and you can start pushing a little harder on the back side opposite of the light and darkening it up, adding a little bit more pressure to the pencil, and then lightening it up as you go towards your light source. And again, I'm shading with the direction of the form. I'm not cutting across in weird ways that the form doesn't go. I'm sticking with the contour of this cone. Now, some people will work sometimes a little bit on a curved approach. You can do that. I feel like it's once you understand the form, it's easier to do that. Beginning wise, I like when we go with the direction of the form right now. We'll just call this for beginners purposes. And again, when you're ready for work a little bit of figure eights or a little bit more of a spiraling technique to get out the grain, go ahead and do that. And then we also said, remember, our bottom of our form, when the two planes meet, might get a little darker there if you haven't already done that. Kind of, again, that principle of two things touching. And again, shading is just about, the dedication and the patience of going back and forth until you get this to look nice and blended. All the grain is out, light to dark, dark to light, whichever way you want to look at it at, until you like it. And then we will do 4 to 5 cones. You pick your light direction and shade, and you'll submit under the cone demo.